They did not even tell me. I found out through a forwarded email. It was not even meant for me. Someone from accounting sent it by accident. My name is Lewis Grant. I was 39 when I learned that the family business, something I had poured 2 decades of my life into, was no longer mine to inherit. It had been quietly signed over to my younger sister. No announcement, no family meeting, not even a private word in confidence. Just a document. I remember the email's subject line. Signature. Verification. Transfer complete. I was sitting in my office when it came in. I clicked it, thinking it was another routine approval for payroll or maybe a vendor contract. I had signed dozens of those every week. Instead, it was a scanned PDF with a legal header. It took me less than 5 seconds to realize what it meant, but I read it twice anyway. Just to be sure I was not misreading the words. Ownership of Grant & Company Holdings had been transferred in full, 100%, into my sister's name. Effective. Immediately. I did not feel angry at first. That came later. At first I felt blank. A silence in the chest. That kind of pause where your mind is too stunned to process anything, like the moment after someone slams a door in your face and you are still standing there blinking. I read it again. Then a third time. Signed by both of our parents. Notarized. Dated last month. Not yesterday. Not last week. Last month. They had been sitting on this for weeks, maybe longer, and not once had they said a word. I sat back in my chair and looked around the office I had been using since I was 26. It was not fancy. I had never cared much about appearances. The desk was old wood, polished but scuffed. A shelf lined, with binders, some of them from the early 2000s. Framed photos. One of me shaking hands with a supplier in Tokyo. Another from a client summit in Chicago. A candid one from a holiday party, laughing with the warehouse team. All of it meant something to me. I had been told this business was mine to continue. Not as a gift, but as a duty. When I graduated from university, my father offered me 2 choices: go work anywhere else I wanted, or come help rebuild the operations side of the company. You will start at the bottom, he had said. No exceptions. I did. I worked the floor. I shadowed the logistics crew. I fixed broken software systems, rewrote supplier agreements, and streamlined the purchasing model. I stayed late, showed up early, cut my salary when we had a rough quarter, and pushed back when the board wanted to make short-sighted cuts. But apparently, none of that had mattered, because one quiet legal document had erased it all. I did not say anything that day, not to my parents, not to my sister, not to anyone. I forwarded the email to my personal account and deleted it from my inbox. Then I closed my laptop and left the office. I drove home in silence. No radio. No phone calls. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and the dull pulse of confusion in my temples. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind ran through every interaction over the last 6 months, every dinner, every meeting, every conversation that suddenly made a lot more sense in hindsight. Like the time my father had canceled our monthly strategy lunch last minute, saying he was too tired, or the board meeting where my mother had asked me to let your sister present this quarter's overview, despite the fact that I had been handling operations since I was 28. She had been getting groomed. Slowly, quietly, while I was focused on keeping the wheels turning, they had been changing the engine. The next morning, I showed up to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at reception. I checked in with the finance team. I sat in on our supplier call and offered suggestions. Nobody knew. My sister came in around noon that day. Her office was 3 doors down from mine. She walked in with a coffee in hand, smiling. I watched her from the hallway. She had no idea I knew. I kept my distance for a while, not out of pettiness. I needed time to observe, to understand the landscape before I reacted. Because one thing I learned early in life: when people hide things from you, it is not always about the event. It is about what they expect you to do when you find out. I think they expected me to lash out. I think they expected me to quit. And for a brief second, I almost did. But then I thought about the staff who had trusted me, the clients I had built long-term relationships with, the systems I had created to keep everything running smoothly. If I walked away, it would not just be me who suffered. It would be the quiet damage done to a company I still cared about, despite what they had done. So I waited. 2 weeks passed before anything changed on the surface. I began noticing subtle shifts. My sister was now included in higher-level meetings. She began signing off on budgets I used to control. She hosted a breakfast for department heads, something my father used to do every quarter. Nobody said it out loud, but the message was clear. There was a new face of the company. She came into my office one day, closed the door, and smiled. "I heard you've been working on a new client model," she said. "Would love to see it sometime." I nodded. "Sure, just let me know when." She paused. "I'm glad we can work together through this transition. It means a lot." That word, transition, told me everything I needed to know. It was rehearsed, planted. She had been told to say it. Probably by my mother. Maybe by both of them. It was damage control. That night I went home and pulled out a notebook. I started writing, not out of revenge, not even out of anger. I just needed clarity. I wrote down every major account I had managed in the last 10 years. Every vendor relationship that I had personally maintained. Every cost-saving initiative I had implemented. I noted which clients still contacted me directly and which ones relied on me for sign-off. Then I wrote one sentence at the bottom of the page. What happens if I quietly stop holding this together? I did not have an answer yet, but I knew the question mattered. A week later, my father called me. First time in over a month. "You have time to grab lunch?" he asked. "Sure," I said. We met at a quiet place we had gone to for years. He looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe just age. He made small talk for a while, then finally said it. "I suppose you heard about the transfer." I nodded. "I did." He looked down at his plate, then back at me. "It was a hard decision." "No," I said calmly. "It was a secret decision." He nodded, said nothing for a while. "We thought it would be easier this way." "For who?" He did not answer. I asked him one question before we left. "If something happens, if things fall apart, do you expect me to step in?" He looked at me for a long moment. "I hope it does not come to that." It was not a no. It was not even an apology. That night I started building something new. Not out of spite, out of necessity, because if they had already decided who was getting the house, I needed to start laying the bricks for my own. And I knew exactly where to begin. That night, I stayed up until almost 3 in the morning. I did not turn on the television. I did not pour a drink. I just sat at the kitchen table with the same notebook, writing in silence. It was the first time in years I had felt completely alone in the business, not just physically, but philosophically. I realized something. The company my parents had built was not mine to continue. It was theirs to give away. And they had. I needed to stop thinking like someone defending a legacy and start thinking like someone building a future. So I began mapping out ideas, not big, dramatic ones, just quiet systems. I noted which clients came to the company for me, not for the logo, which vendors called my direct line when they needed a decision, which problems no one else had solved but I had been quietly managing for years. I was not preparing revenge. I was preparing a pivot. It began with conversations, casual ones at first, over coffee, after meetings. Nothing dramatic. I would ask questions I already knew the answers to just to hear how others saw things. How's the onboarding been for the new logistics vendor? Did we ever resolve that supply delay issue last quarter? Have you been getting the updates you need since the shift in operations? People were honest, some of them too honest. They assumed I was still part of the inner circle. They did not realize I had already been cut out. I took notes. By the third week, I had a clearer picture of what I had built and what they were trying to operate without me, and it was not going smoothly. A client in Colorado emailed me directly, asking if I was still overseeing their support pipeline. I told them I was not, and they replied within minutes asking if we could revisit things. Another client, one I had brought in myself years ago, said they had not been contacted for a quarterly review since January. Small cracks, not enough to cause panic. But I knew what small cracks turned into when no one was watching. I did not sabotage anything. I did not badmouth anyone, but I stopped filling in the gaps. I stopped covering for the things I was no longer responsible for. I gave the system room to show where it depended on me. Meanwhile, I made 3 calls, not business calls, personal ones. Old friends, former colleagues, people I trusted. I asked quiet questions, not, "Do you have a job?" questions. More like, "If you were starting over, what would you do differently?" Each conversation gave me a different answer, but they all ended with the same question back at me. "Are you planning to leave?" And the truth was, I did not know. Not yet. I was still weighing one question in my head. Do I walk away quietly, or do I build something that makes walking away feel like a step forward, not a retreat? By the end of that month, my sister began making changes. She rolled out a new pricing structure, one she said would modernize margins, but it ignored volume discount patterns I had negotiated over years. She reduced turnaround time on service guarantees, trying to make us look faster, without checking with operations. Clients began calling in, complaining that delivery schedules were being missed. Some of them copied me on emails, assuming I was still the one responsible. I forwarded everything to the appropriate department. Politely, professionally. I did not insert myself, but I kept every copy. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after I had seen the transfer document, she called me into her office. She smiled when I walked in. "Just wanted to touch base," she said. "I noticed you have been a little detached lately." I sat down without speaking. "I know this transition has been a lot," she said, "but I want you to know I really value your role here." I nodded. "I believe you." She looked surprised. "You do?" "I believe you think that," I said calmly. "But I also know the numbers." She shifted in her chair. "Would you be open," she said slowly, "to taking on more of an advisory position? Focus on internal systems, maybe. Less client-facing?" There it was. The real reason she had called me in, not to connect, not to understand, to shrink me. She wanted me out of sight. I smiled. "Let me think about it." She nodded like she had won something. I left her office and drove to the other side of town. I parked outside a small industrial lot that I had helped a supplier secure years ago when they were expanding. The space was quiet now. For lease. That was the first time I felt something spark. Not anger. Not resentment. Possibility. I made a note of the number. That night I took out the notebook again. This time I wrote one word at the top of the page. Independence, not rebellion, not revenge. Independence. I listed what I knew. My personal relationships with clients in 6 states. My operational experience, logistics, procurement, strategy, vendor connections across 3 sectors. Trust. Earned, not given. What I did not list were job titles or shares or approval from my family. Because none of that had protected me. They had shown me what mattered. Quietly, brutally, without saying it out loud. The next day I took a long walk during lunch. No destination. Just thinking. I passed a local coffee shop and noticed someone waving from inside. It was a vendor I had worked with 5 years ago. She had built her own supply chain consultancy after leaving the corporate world. We talked for 15 minutes. By the end of it, she handed me her card. "If you ever build something of your own," she said, "call me." I slid the card into my jacket and smiled. Something was shifting. At work, my parents had grown noticeably absent. Not that they had been around much lately anyway. But now, it was different. They were retreating, intentionally, letting her take the spotlight, letting me fade. My father's last words to me echoed quietly, "I hope it does not come to that." It would, not out of malice, not because I wanted it to, but because they had made the decision for me. Long before I saw that email. The only question now was when. That Friday I got a message from our longest-standing logistics partner, the one who had stuck by us during a downturn 5 years ago. "Can we talk? Need your input on something sensitive." We met at a diner just outside the city. He did not waste time. "There is talk going around," he said. "Some clients are saying your company's changing. Harder to get clear answers. Slow to respond. We have seen missed coordination twice now." I did not deny it. "I want to know something," he said. "If you were running your own shop, would you do things differently?" I looked at him. "Yes," I said. "I would." He reached into his briefcase and handed me a sealed folder. "If that day comes," he said, "this is what our business would look like with you." It was not a proposal. It was a commitment. I did not open it until I got home. Inside were numbers, terms, projections. He was offering to shift 70% of his business to me if I started something new. I sat with that for a long time. Not out of greed. Out of weight, because I realized what it meant. They had taken the business from me, but they had not taken my value. That had always come from somewhere else. And now, I had a choice to make. It was strange how clear everything became once I saw that folder. The logistics partner had given me something I had not expected. Confirmation. Not just that I still held value, but that someone was willing to stake a business on it. I did not rush into anything. I kept showing up to the office each morning. I still answered client calls, still replied to internal emails, but something had shifted, and people noticed. I was not bitter. I was quiet. And in that quiet I began building something. I started small. I mapped out a 3-month transition timeline. Not for them, but for me. I audited the relationships I had maintained and identified which ones would follow me without persuasion. I knew who trusted my judgment, not just my title. I also knew who saw me as just another face in the meeting room. I did not intend to poach. I intended to protect. I leased the industrial lot I had visited a few weeks earlier. Quietly. Personally. Not under a business name, yet. Just a short-term lease with the option to extend. I told no one. 2 weeks later, I hired a freelance consultant to help me model a lean, specialized version of what our family business used to do, not a duplicate. A refinement, focused, nimble, honest. While my sister was busy modernizing operations, I was laying groundwork. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation between her and a client I had worked with for 6 years. She was promising results we could not deliver on the timeline she was suggesting. I knew because I had handled the operations behind that contract personally. After the call, I walked into her office. "That deadline won't work," I said evenly. She smiled. "We have to show confidence." "You can be confident and still be honest." She gave me a look I knew well. Dismissive, condescending. "Let me handle this." So I did something I had not done before. I walked away, without offering a fix. The shipment missed the client's window. They were furious, not at her, at the company, and when the email landed, she came straight to my desk. "Why didn't you tell me we couldn't meet the timeline?" she asked. "I did," I said. There was a long pause. Then she blinked like she was trying to decide whether to argue or deflect. She chose neither. She just walked away. That was the beginning of the shift. I started getting calls, discreet ones, from clients and vendors. "Are you still managing our account? Is this change permanent? What are your plans, if you don't mind me asking?" I answered each question with a version of the truth. I said things were in transition. I said I appreciated their loyalty over the years. I said I would let them know soon, because the truth was, I still had not told my parents. And I knew when I did, it would not be a conversation. It would be a dividing line. But I did not want to go to them empty-handed. I wanted to be ready, so I kept building. I met with a former operations director who had taken early retirement. He was sharp, precise, and deeply respected in the industry. I asked if he would consult with me on a new venture. He looked at me over his coffee cup and said, "You finally leaving?" I nodded. He leaned back. "About time." We shook hands the next day. It was happening slowly, almost invisibly. But it was happening. My sister, meanwhile, was too busy managing the image of the company to notice the foundation shifting. She had hired a PR firm to refresh the brand, changed the website, renamed the client tiers, but she never stopped to ask who built those relationships. She assumed if she held the name, she held the trust. She did not. And then something happened that forced my hand. A client in Chicago, one I had onboarded personally and worked with every quarter for 4 years, sent a termination notice. It was short, cold, professional. When I called to ask what happened, the executive paused, then said, "This is not about you, but it is clear you are not the one in charge anymore." That was it. The silence that followed told me everything. They had not wanted to leave. They had lost confidence in the leadership, and they did not see me as part of it anymore. I sat in my car for a long time after that call. No radio, no movement, just breathing. Then I drove home, opened the folder from the logistics partner, and began filling out the incorporation paperwork for my new venture. I named it quietly. Nothing flashy. Just a name that meant something to me, one that no one else could take credit for. I filed everything that night. The next morning, I told my parents. We met in their backyard. Same chairs we had used on Sunday afternoons for years. Told them calmly, directly, without blame. I am leaving the company. I have already set things in motion. My mother looked heartbroken. My father, disappointed, but not surprised. "You're walking away from something we built for you," he said. "No," I replied. "You gave it to her. I am building something, of my own." There was a long silence. My mother asked, "Does it have to be this way?" "I did not choose this," I said. "But I am choosing what comes next." They did not argue, and that told me more than words ever could. 3 days later, my sister called me into her office again. This time, she was not smiling. "You talked to the board?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I imagine they are starting to talk amongst themselves." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you starting something?" I already did. Her face changed. The bravado slipped for just a second. "You could have told me." "I did. When you tried to push me into a corner." She stood up. "This company was never going to be yours, you know. Not fully." I nodded. "I know." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I do not need the name. I built the relationships. I built the trust. And I can do it again. Without your permission." She sat back down without another word, and I walked out, for good. The weeks that followed moved fast. 3 vendors signed with me by the end of the first month. 2 clients sent transition notices, leaving the family company and joining mine. I did not recruit. I did not advertise. I just told the truth. And when people called to ask where I had gone, I answered honestly. Building something smaller, something real. Most of them responded the same way. Let us know how we can support you. I had no logo, no slogan, no family backing. But I had integrity. And in business, that is not just rare, it is magnetic. By the time my old company started noticing, it was too late. They had the brand. I had the relationships, and relationships move. I never set out to build something bigger than the original business. That was never the point. I just wanted something I could stand behind, something that reflected my values, my discipline, and the way I had chosen to treat people for the past 2 decades. I did not need the name. I just needed clarity, and the freedom to do the work without navigating someone else's ego. 3 months after I left, my new office was fully operational. Small team, small space, purpose-built. I kept overhead lean but talent high. Every hire was someone who knew the business inside out. I did not want cheerleaders. I wanted competence. The difference was instant. There were no side agendas, no turf wars, no politics. Every meeting had one goal: serve the client, deliver the work, improve the system. And that energy started attracting attention. A regional distributor called me and said, "We heard you started your own shop. We're tired of how slow things have gotten over there. Can you handle us?" I said, "I will not take what I cannot service. But yes, we can handle you." We onboarded them a week later. That was client number 5. And I had not knocked on a single door. I never once used my old connections to undercut pricing or manipulate loyalty. I let people choose, and they did. The family company, meanwhile, started showing signs of strain. The front desk receptionist, who had been there since I was in high school, sent me a message on LinkedIn. "It's not the same without you. Feels cold now. Different." A supplier I had worked with for 10 years emailed me. "They're changing terms again. Not workable. Are you open to a conversation?" Then the warehouse manager called. Not to gossip, but to ask if I had any openings. That call hit me harder than I expected. He had been loyal, steady, never took sides, and now he was looking for a way out. I told him the truth. "I can't promise you anything yet, but if something opens up, I'll call you." He paused, then said, "You did the right thing, Louis. They never saw what you did for that company." It was the first time in months someone had said my name and right thing in the same sentence. That stayed with me, but I still had not spoken to my sister. Not since the day I walked out of her office. She had made a few public comments, indirect, things on social media about loyalty and family values, but I ignored them. People like that always try to rewrite the story. I was not interested in the drama. I was building. And then one evening, I got an email from one of the 3 largest clients we had ever served. One of the last I assumed would stay with the family. Business subject line, "We need to talk." The message was short. "We're evaluating new partnerships. You came up. Let us know if you're open to a conversation." That was the moment I knew things had shifted. Not just for me, but in the market, reputation was moving. I called them the next morning. They were direct. "We do not want to get involved in anything messy. But the service levels have dropped. The communication is inconsistent. And we know you handled our account personally for years. Are you in a position to take us on?" I did not say yes immediately. I gave them honest timelines. Capacity limitations. Promised only what I could deliver. They signed within 48 hours. It sent a wave through the industry. The family business had officially lost a cornerstone client. 2 days later, my sister called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi," I said, neutral. There was a pause. "Are you happy?" she asked. That was not what I expected. "I am building something I believe in," I said. "That brings me peace. I do not know if that's happiness, but it is enough." She exhaled. I made mistakes. I know. I did not expect it to go like this. You expected people to follow the name, I said. They followed the trust. She was quiet. Then, I think Mom and Dad regret it. I did not answer. Are you angry with them? No, I said. I stopped being angry when I realized they were protecting what they understood. You talk the way they talk. You sell the way they sell. That felt familiar. I never fit that mold. So what now? I build. You rebuild. That is up to you. You know, it was never personal. It always is. You just did not care until it affected you. There was another silence. Then she said something I will never forget. I did not know how hard it was until I tried doing it myself. That, I said quietly, is why I left. We did not talk long after that. She said goodbye. I said take care. And that was it. No closure. No apology. Just the kind of conversation that lingers without resolving anything. But I was fine with that, because by then, I had something better. I had proof of what I was worth. Without anyone else's permission. 6 months after leaving, my new company was profitable. Not massively. Not in the kind of numbers that turn heads at conferences. But enough to pay the people I hired fairly, deliver what we promised, and keep our integrity intact. And that was the win my parents eventually invited me over for dinner again. There was no grand reconciliation, just quiet acknowledgement. My father asked, "Do you miss it?" "No," I said. I miss the version of it that existed before the decisions got political. Before the title became more important than the work. He nodded slowly. My mother asked if I had considered reuniting the businesses. I said no. This works, I told her. It works because no one can take credit for it, but the people doing the work. She smiled softly. I think we underestimated you. I know, I said, but there was no bitterness in my voice. Just truth. That was the last time we talked about it. The company I built now serves 9 clients. All legacy relationships, all earned without a single pitch deck. We have no social media strategy, no brand influencers, just referrals and results. And that is enough, because somewhere along the way, I stopped chasing recognition. I started honoring contribution, and that, finally, felt like home.